Hi, I'm Nick Percoco, Vice President of Strategic Services at Rapid7. Thanks for watching Whiteboard Wednesday. This week's topic is the Internet Explorer 0 Day that most of you probably have heard about. If you haven't heard about it, Microsoft released an advisory on April 26th, just a few days ago, that talked about a critical flaw in Internet Explorer. And in fact, it's so critical that it affects all browser versions really back to 6.0. The result of which could enable an attacker to execute remote code on an end user's browser by visiting a malicious website or clicking on a malicious link. And in fact, that's affecting about 25% of all internet users out on the internet today. Now, that was reported to Microsoft through Microsoft's active protection program by a security firm named FireEye. Now, you may be wondering, well, how did FireEye find this flaw? Did they discover this vulnerability? Well, according to their reports, they actually saw this actively being exploited in the wild. And you may also be wondering, what does that mean? Well, criminal groups or nation states actually go and perform security research, and they try to identify vulnerabilities and flaws in systems that they can then use as part of their arsenal to launch targeted attacks. Now, these types of attacks are not going to find themselves in widespread email campaigns or compromises of websites in order to attack general users out there. These campaigns are going to target specific tactical and strategic individuals and tactical strategic organizations. For example, a criminal group may be targeting a Fortune 50 company. They're going to send targeted emails against those individuals, and with hopes that they click on a link and in turn compromise their system via this Internet Explorer exploit, and in turn gain access or plant malware onto their system. They're going to utilize that to maybe potentially gain access to insider information about earnings reports or other intellectual property, and in turn to then sell that to individuals who might be interested in it. Now, in that phase, we're sort of calling this the pre-discovery phase. This is before somebody like FireEye or even Microsoft knew that this vulnerability existed. For the most of the people out on the internet, for most of us, that's in a period of relatively low risk. Because you can imagine there's dozens of these types of vulnerabilities probably floating around out there at any given moment, and most of us are not actively being exploited through them. Now, once FireEye discovered it, and once that Microsoft released their advisory on April 26th, we're in this post-discovery phase of this Internet Explorer exploit. What that means is that there's criminal groups that are going to be ramping up their efforts. And they know that, one, there's no patch available because Microsoft hasn't come up with something yet. They also know that Microsoft is going to patch this problem in the next couple of days, and they need to utilize this vulnerability as much as they can in order to make the best bang for their buck out of the investment they put in developing, finding the vulnerability and developing the exploit and weaponizing it. So for most users out there, we're in a relatively high area of risk, so you need to pay attention and you need to have some mitigation actions that you apply to your own systems and to your business systems that you interact with. So the first piece you can do is install Chrome and Firefox and stop using Internet Explorer. Right now, any Internet Explorer use is extremely high risk. You can visit a website that may look completely legitimate, but it may have been compromised. And it maybe have been compromised, and code to exploit this vulnerability could be placed on that site. Also, remove IE as your default browser. You don't want to inadvertently click on a link in an email or click on a link in an attachment that you had and start using Internet Explorer when you really want to be using Firefox or Chrome at this time. You also can test and deploy Emmet 4.1 in your environment. Now, Emmet's a tool that was released by Microsoft, and it's a tool that specifically works with Internet Explorer and other document document reader type applications that may run on your system, and basically makes it much more difficult for these types of exploits to be successful. And in fact, if you're running Emmet 4.1 on your system today and you're using Internet Explorer, there's been some tests and some confirmations that this vulnerability is actually not effective. The exploit's not effective associated with this vulnerability in your systems. And then finally, keep in mind that Windows XP has been end-of-lifed, and there is no patch available. So it's extremely important for those users out there that have Windows XP systems. If they're running Internet Explorer or they're utilizing Internet Explorer, they're in a period of really, really high risk. So that's extremely important that either you get off of Windows XP or you stop using Internet Explorer on those systems as of today and for the foreseeable future. So with that, I'm Nick Percoco, Vice President of Strategic Services at Rapid7. Thanks for watching Whiteboard Wednesday, and hope to see you next week.